He went into the first classroom and he instructed all of the men that were in the classroom to leave the room and instructed the women to go and line up against the back wall.
Murders, mysteries, unexplained stories, and our family's crazy opinions on them all. Join us now. The Family School of Thought is in session.
Hey guys, welcome again to the Family School of Thought. Hope everybody had a really great week. Hope everybody
Hello, yes. I missed that.
Okay, everybody's doing good, I hope. You
Yes.
can see that Mom and I are both up at Weasel Fest.
Yeah,
Together.
mom's
Together in
off
the same
camera.
place. How about that?
She needs a scooch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started. I know we're running a little
Yeah.
late today. Jess, give us some fun facts.
Yeah, so I have a few fun facts. Mental floss, amazing facts. So, did you guys know Play-Doh, the little, everybody knows what Play-Doh is. It was originally marketed to be a wallpaper cleaner. So, I don't know how well it works, but maybe next time, it stains on your wall, try a little Play-Doh. Maybe. I don't know. It could cause more issues because, I don't know. My next fact is the peace symbol. Everybody knows the peace sign, peace symbol. Not with your fingers, the circle.
Yeah.
Oh, the actual symbol.
Yeah, the actual peace symbol. The peace sign was it was designed in 1958 by a British artist, and he was an activist, Gerald Holtham. Specifically for the campaign for nuclear disarmament. So I thought that was kind of neat. I have another third fact. Relative to their size, Chihuahuas have the biggest brains of all dog breeds in the world.
That is hard to believe.
Well, compared to their size.
Yeah, compared to their size. So, their size, the percentage of their, the size of their brain compared to the size of their body.
Oh, like a rat, they have a smaller.
Well, the brain fills up more of their skull than any other dog.
Than any other bird. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, those are my fun facts for the week. Cassie, give us a song.
Well, if our song works this week, I'll play it here. Nope. All right. Well,
it's kind of like a guessing game almost at this point. It sounded like a Michael Jackson song, though.
Ooh, close, kind of name-wise. This is "Father Figure" by George Michael.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And this one, I don't know if he wrote it to be weird or if it just was the times where he, didn't really realize the, intention that come across. But this whole song is about how George Michael is singing about how he's going to be the protector. He's going to be the father figure. He'll be your priest, your therapist, something like that. Like, I can't remember the lyrics, but he's going to protect this person. And it's very much, it seems to be like he wants to be a father figure, like as the song title suggests. But it's a little too romantic to just be paternal.
He wants to be somebody's daddy.
He wants to be somebody's daddy. It's one of those songs where it's like, oh, okay, if you like that, whatever. But even one of the lyrics has to deal with, I've had enough of crime and our love can be seen as a crime, which is, I don't know, awkward to me. Right. But hey, it is what.
Or George Michael was gay, so maybe he was writing it in the ad because at that time it was illegal
And it was,
to-
and that's I can kind of see that as well.
Let's take it that way.
Okay.
I hate to burst your bubble, but yeah.
He was kind of the first person. He obviously wasn't the first gay person to sing, but he was one of the first people to kind of like
be
talk
well known. Yeah.
about
Or
gay
yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yes. So it really could be kind of a very not coming out, but basically trying to get his point across that, you know, his love is forbidden.
Right.
It could have been done in a separate way. I don't know. I just don't like the father figure part of the song.
Yeah. It's a little weird.
The lyrics are, "I will be your teacher, preacher," which I don't know.
Yeah.
Gets a little creepy to me.
Maybe I'm gonna go with the gay factors. Maybe he was working with a new partner that was new to being gay or new to being open about being gay. He's
Yeah,
gonna
I mean,
teach
I
him
totally
how
go
to
with
do-
He was
that.
going to be
If the music
help
video-
them and lead them through.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be
Yeah, I can totally see that.
optimistic.
The music video kind of goes against that because the entire music video he is making out with a girl. So, I mean,
Oh, of course. Yeah.
it could be a deflection, but hey, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's my song for the week.
Good.
It is a good song.
It's a
It's
good
a great
song.
Michael's
They're
great.
all good songs, but yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
So today is my week. This is my week. Have you guys ever heard of, and I may be pronouncing this wrong because it's French, but I should say French Canadian because it happened in Canada. The Ecole Polytechnique Massacre. I can't even say it correctly.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
The club where they had the.
No.
Okay. No, I don't.
This is
know.
not a club. So, Polytech. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right because I never took French. I don't know French enough, but it's Ecole Polytech. It's an engineer. Oh, sorry, Ecole Polytechnique de Montreal. So it's a engineering school in Montreal, Canada. Montreal, Quebec, in Canada. I should get all this right. So this happened back in 1989. So, Mom, Dad, you guys may remember this. I don't know if it made international news or not, but it did happen in Canada, so kind of close ish to the United States. But so this involved a Canadian anti-feminist mass murderer who he was born Gamel Roderick Elias Galbri, I believe is how you say his name. And he went into the engineering school, killed 14 women, and wounded 10 more women and 4 men on December 6th of 1989 at the engineering school. And that engineering school is affiliated with the University of Montreal. So I'm going to get into that. I found this topic from a book that I'm reading right now. And I thought of I was reading it. I'm like, oh, I have no idea who this person is. Did some research and I thought it was a cool little topic, especially with everything that's still kind of going on right now in the world with women's rights and everything with that. So his whole purpose of going to the school on December 6th was to kill feminists. A lot of people at the time, or a lot of news sources at the time, said he was there to kill women, which I think was kind of his motivation, but really he was there to kill feminists for that. And after he killed the 14 women and then wounded the others, he committed suicide. And he had a suicide note on him that was found after the fact. That basically said that his whole motivation was feminist. He blamed feminists for ruining his life. Um, and it included another note that had a list of 19 other radical feminists that he would have killed if he had the time. So um, this massacre was described as a crime at the time, as a crime against the future because um, oh, and I should back up. So he changed his name to uh, Mark Lepine, at the age of 14. So we'll get into that, but he ended up changing his name. So going forward, Mark Lepine is what I will be addressing him as. So this was described as a crime against the future because Lepine was upset about and was trying to destroy the idea of women someday achieving social and economic equality. So he was doing this to like take a stance because he didn't want women to be equal to men. So he targeted specifically women engineers because he thought that they were not just women, but women who were trying to take the place of men. And the purpose of his killing was to terrorize the women that witnessed this back into what he thought was their rightful place. Which I saw that and it kind of made me wonder. I heard the line putting them back in their rightful place. And Cassie, could you tell where my mind went to?
And
Not what?
Andrew Tate, but I don't know if you guys know that.
No, I went straight to Harry Potter.
Oh,
The wizards, the Voldemort was putting,
Muggles.
the Muggles back in their rightful places, or that kind of stuff. Which is she's the author of the book that I'm reading right now. So I thought it was kind of a unique little connection that I found because it's not really anything to do with her beyond her mentioning it in the book. So on December 6th, 1989, Lapine decided that women needed to pay for all of their troubles that they caused him. So he went to the engineering school and decided to cause mass murder. Funny enough, this engineering school, is one that he applied to and was rejected from twice. So I think there was also some underlining issues where these women were accepted into the school that he thought he should rightfully be in and not them. But he entered the school. He entered the school building armed with a rifle, a Ruger Mini 14 automatic rifle, and a knife. And then along with his anti-feminist agenda. And then within a matter of hours, he had killed the 14 women and then wounded 14 other people. Today, this massacre remains one of Canada's worst violent incidents in history. And so it was a pretty bad situation. But he went into the first classroom and he instructed all of the men that were in the classroom to leave the room and instructed the women to go and line up against the back wall. And then at the time, this was one of the first like school shootings really that ever happened. So nobody really knew what was going on. So, okay, so he walked into the first classroom, instructed all the men to leave the room, told the women to line up against the back wall. And because this was in 1989, this was one of the very first like school shootings that happened. So nobody really knew what to do. They didn't really take him seriously until he started shooting rounds at the ceiling. And then after that, they started taking him seriously. And the men left, which I like. You have, I don't know how many. It didn't say in any of the stories. It didn't say how many people were in the classroom, but you have one guy with one gun and one knife, and you have multiple people. You didn't think to like take him down at that point.
Right.
But all the men left the room, and the women were lined up, and a witness to this said that he was heard saying, "You're all a bunch of feminists, and I hate feminists." And then he just opened fired on all the women that were in that classroom. The men left, sitting there, um, and so then he wandered the hallways of the school, and he could be heard shouting or yelling, "I hate feminists," and then he just shot at any woman that came across his path. And he wound up in a classroom on the third floor, where a female was presenting, at the front of the room. And after he shot all the other all the other women in that space, in that room, he went up to that presenter and stabbed her. And then he put all of his ammo down, and he put his knife down, and he shot himself in the head. And which I thought was kind of weird.
I just don't
But
understand why everybody just allowed that to happen.
that's
I mean,
I
what's
think
the
I
shooting?
think you gotta
Everybody wrong.
well, and that's what I was kind of thinking too. But I think too, you gotta think about, this was back in 1989. This is also in Canada, but like
This is
they're
before
like this was
online. Like
yeah,
this is
this was
before
before
school shootings were
yeah,
big.
this was like one of the very first ones. So it's like I think a lot of it, and this was at an engineering school. So I'm sure engineering students, they do a lot of things where stuff makes sounds that sound like a gun, or things blow up, or they're like scientist people too. So I don't think people really understood what was going on or thought that it was real at the time. But I don't, and it never really explained on why he ran out of time or why he had this time limit set for him. But he ended up shooting himself in the head. And then when the police came, or whatever the officers are called in Canada, when they came, they found he left behind 60 rounds of ammunition. So he potentially could have killed more people if he didn't commit suicide. But they found his suicide note, which was like in his pocket. It was 3 pages long. Um, and I gotta get it because I didn't write all his suicide note down. But it's 3 pages long, and it at the very end of it had an additional list of 19 other names, of women he had planned to kill that were not at that school. So there was thoughts that he had a bigger plan going on, that he was looking to do more. But one of the people on that list was a feminist politician, a journalist. Her name is Francine Pelletier, and she was a journalist for La Vie en Rose, which is a feminist publication, a feminist like magazine. So, but his suicide note has been released, so you can find it online. But it did say, like, it started off with, "I had 15 minutes to write this. Please note that if I commit suicide today," because he goes, "your month date." So 89/12/06. "It is not for economic reasons, for I've waited until I exhausted all of my financial means, even refusing jobs, but for political reasons. Because I have decided to send the feminists who have always ruined my life to their maker. For 7 years, life has brought me no joy, and being totally blasé, I have decided to put an end to those viragos." And it goes in. He tried to enter the Canadian Forces as an officer cadet when he was younger, in his youth, and they would not allow him to join. And he was refused because they refused him because of asocial, which that's spelled incorrectly. So I'm not really. And this was his letter, or his suicide note was originally in French, so it was translated. So some of the translation may not be 100%. But then his whole plan was to join the Canadian Forces to be able to kill feminists. while he was serving. But because he was denied, he waited until December 6th of 1989 to execute his plans. And in between, he continued his studies in a haphazard way, for that they would never really interest him, knowing that what he wanted to advance in his fate. Um, so even if the mad, I don't know, it's really long, so it kind of goes on and on. But basically, the letter states that women were not women were not authorized to be on the front line. They shouldn't be in positions that they were in, like such as engineers or as doctors. They should be, you know, in home in the kitchen, basically. So he had a 3-page long suicide note that he left on his body. Um, there were, besides being like motivated by killing anti-fem or for killing feminists because he was anti-feminist, his mother claims that she believes that a lot of this kind of stemmed from his childhood. He grew up in a very abusive household. His father was very abusive to his mom as well as the children. And she ended up filing for divorce when he was around like they separated when he was like around 7. Um, and I think they got divorced when he was like around 9, um, or a little bit later. But she blames that whole situation of his abusive beginnings and then the divorce. She says that he just turned all of his anger into hatred for feminist women. His mom, her name is Monique Lapine, um, was a nurse or is a nurse. I'm not sure if she's still alive or not, or if she's still able to work. But when she divorced his father, who was an Algerian businessman, she decided to go back into nursing and go back to school to further her nursing career, because she wanted to be able to provide for her children. And once the parents got divorced, he never saw his father ever again. His father just completely like dropped out of his life. And so Mark Lapine, the killer, he had a sister, and him and his sister lived with other families, like during the week, basically, while their mom worked, and they only were able to see their mom on the weekends to spend time with her because she was so busy trying to work and make money to support her family. But like I said, at
Was
the age of 14, he changed his name. What?
Sorry, was that her decision, like the mom's decision to have them
Yes.
go stay with you? Okay.
Yes, yep. So she signed him up for a program that it's basically like kind of like a child services program that it's there to they live with like a foster family almost, but she still has all the parental rights. It's just they're living with somebody else is taking care, like a live-in nanny almost, but it's through so it's
Do
through
you
like the
think that he was
government. So
abused, and that's why?
what?
Do you think maybe he was abused through that fostering?
So there was claims. So his sister struggled with drugs and anxiety and issues from the abuse that they had from their father, and everything. And so she got into trouble and all that kind of stuff. So she was kind of like a troubled kid, while they were part of this. And then his mom, Monique Lapine, had signed him up for like they just called it Big Brothers, which I'm assuming is like a Big Brother Big Sister kind of program, and to kind of help guide him to make sure that he stays on the right path and stuff, because he was a very shy, soft-spoken child and really had no interest in gaining friends and that kind of stuff. And he did become close with his big brother, but his mom stopped that because there was allegations that the Big Brother program, there was a lot of molestation going on. And so she kind of yanked it, but both Mark Lapine and the big brother, who was never really named, both denied those allegations and denied that any molestation happened between the two of them. So I don't get there could be, but I think a lot of this kind of stems from the abuse that he had with his dad or from his dad. And at 14, he changed his name to Mark Lapine, which Lapine is his mother's maiden name. And he changed it to that. And the reason that he gave when he changed it was because it was for the hatred of his father. So I think he had a lot of anger and hate for his father for the abuse that he did. Because it did say too that he was the one that got most of the abuse from his father.
What kind of abuse
And
did
physical abuse, like
So-
nothing that was sexual that I could see. It was just all physical abuse.
so
But his mom and his sister did too. But I think he resented the fact that his mom divorced divorced his dad, and then went back to work and left him, because she went into the working world and left him and his sister to basically fend for themselves with random people almost.
Well, and
With
especially
that,
in a
so-
lot of those cases where it's a single mother raising a
Yeah.
child, even if the father is the problem, like you see a lot
Yeah.
of resentment because that's the only parent you have. So there's
Right.
resentment towards them.
Right. And it does seem like, I think
Are you
too,
saying
like
that children like to push their resentments off on their parents?
Yeah.
sure. So,
I
but
just
I
mean
know,
that like a lot of the problems are there and that's the only
Yeah.
person that they can blame for it.
Right. And with this one though too, and I never got the name of his sister, but both him and his sister struggled through their adult lives and everything too. So his sister actually died in 1996, at the age of 28 from a cocaine overdose. So she never really got over her drug issues or drug addictions, and that she kind of started when she was a teenager due to all the we'll call it like PTSD and all the issues that she had as a child. But now Mark, or at least what I saw in like the most recent articles, Mark Lapine's mom, Monique Lapine, now she is like a motivational speaker. She goes around and talks about her son and what she thinks kind of happened with him and the abuse that he suffered and how he developed from that to be what he was at the end of his life kind of thing. But I think too some of it is kind of going back. So he, like I said, he applied to be in the Canadian Forces and was rejected from that. He began a science program at a college. It didn't say what college, but he began a science program at a college. I'm assuming the University of Montreal, since that's where the engineering class program that was. In 1982, and then like a year later, switched to a technological program. And then in 1986, he dropped out of college. I saw somewhere too that he got his degree in college, but then in other places I saw he dropped out. But then he was fired from his job at a hospital due to his poor attitude. He had issues with, anger issues, attitude issues. There was some information where he was kind of um, diagnosed as a narcissist, and also having personality disorders. And so I think he had some mental issues too. And I think some of it may have stemmed from the abuse of it as a child too. But I think he just had all this failure that happened, and then he blamed women for that failure. And then because in 1988 he began a computer program course, and then he dropped out of that as well. And then it was during those times that he applied twice to be in that Ecole Polytechnique engineering school. He applied twice, and he wasn't refused to be part of that program for any reasons other than he lacked two required compulsory courses. So he basically just refused to take these two courses that would allow him to be part of this program. So it's like I don't know, he kind of like set his own fate, really. He didn't want to do the work to get into the program. But basically, most of his adult life, he complained that women were working in non-traditional jobs, and he didn't think that that was right in the world, and that they didn't deserve to be in these jobs that were male jobs, that were traditionally male jobs. And I think a lot of it too is like it goes back to the end. He went into the engineering school to kill the female engineers.
Yeah, that definitely correlates with the fact that his mother, like he blames his mother
Mhm.
having a job for him having kind of a
Right.
terrible childhood. You know,
Yeah.
he probably thinks that if women couldn't have, you know, regular jobs, she would have either A, stayed home and took care of them,
Right.
and she wouldn't have
Right.
divorced the father because he would have been the sole
Right.
income.
Right. And that's something too, is that I know, I read in the story too that she like tried to get child support. The courts approved it, but then his father never paid it. So it's like she couldn't depend on the child support to help raise those kids, because they never got it.
Well, where was the
So
grandma and grandpa? I mean, why
it
couldn't
never that
Oh.
never says. But his dad was an Algerian businessman. So I'm assuming that maybe on the paternal side, they were in Algeria. It never mentioned where her parents, the mother's parents, were, the maternal grandparents. I
Well,
couldn't find that information, but
that's a really big scam that even still happens today, where people come from other countries and say that they are businessmen or multi-million dollar company owners, get
mhm,
American women pregnant, and then
yeah,
basically green cards to come over here and start
right, right,
businesses, but they have never
yeah,
been a business owner before.
right.
So
There was
he probably didn't even have a business back in Algeria.
Probably not. And it really seems like the father was really not part of the picture even in the beginning. He was just abusive from the very beginning. But it did say, so I did find too, when he applied, when Lapine applied for the Canadian Forces, when he was denied his acceptance from there,
and why?
he later told it doesn't really say, it just he was rejected during the interview process. That's probably but I'm assuming because a lot of the stuff it said that he just was a narcissist, so he, was very arrogant and, probably didn't take authority very well, kind of a situation. But after being refused that or denied being part of that, he told a friend it was because of his difficulties accepting authority, and he wrote a suicide letter note later that found to be antisocial. And the official statement from the military after the massacre stated that he had been interviewed, assessed, and determined to be unsuitable. That's all that they said. But he also, after, I read it somewhere, I'm trying to find it again because I didn't write it down. But after he was denied, I read it somewhere that he basically said that he was going to commit a mass murder and then commit suicide. So this was something that I think he had planned for years,
It was well planned.
and it was well planned out, and he had planned it for a lot of years. And I think
That's
somewhere I
sad.
read too that he had planned it for like 7 years. So
Right.
it's like
And
he knew what he was doing. It was very well thought out. And with something for that well thought out, I mean, it sucks to have 14 people killed and, more wounded, but could you imagine
Yeah.
the amount of damage, especially again, because this was like one of the very first school shootings, it was a university, but like this was one of the very first ones. So like people didn't know what was going on when this happened. So
And the
That's
red flags were always all there, but nobody.
right. Yeah, and that's what, like as a child he was different, and his mom, after the divorce, that was something too, that his mom talked to like a psychiatrist about her children because she was very worried about the mental well-being of her children. The mom sounded like she did her very best, like she did everything that she could, but the psychiatrist basically said, hey, he's just very shy. He's a normal kid. He's very shy. He just likes to be isolated. The sister, on the other hand, was diagnosed with some like anxiety issues and that kind of stuff, and again had that drug addiction from an early age, and that was picked up from the psychiatrist, but not for him. But I think that kind of that's relevant with narcissists. They charm people and they make people think they're something that they're not, and then if he has a personality disorder, that's something too that you can change that, or like you could put on that charm and make me be manipulative with people on that and get away with some of that kind of stuff.
A couple
But
things, one thing that struck me through this was he kind of grew up without a family support around him.
Yeah, right.
And I think that happens a lot, when you don't have, you're not surrounded by, grandparents and aunts and uncles, and cousins. And, if you guys did something bad while you were in high school, you had a responsibility. You'd feel responsible every time you're around your family, so
right.
it wouldn't be so isolated to you. And so that
he really had nobody to hold him account. Yeah.
A family around these people. Yeah.
Yeah. There's nobody to hold him accountable.
Right.
So, now, December 6th now because of this, is observed in Canada as the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. So that has been something that has been, pushed, but this happened too at a time like back in 1989 when the women's movement started moving forward in Canada and became a big thing, and women were starting to stand up and push for equal rights, and again, it kind of goes back to we're living in history again. This is something that like we're repeating history, I guess I should say, because the whole women's rights started in Canada around this time because of a female who was pregnant that wanted an abortion, and her boyfriend didn't want her to get an abortion, and so they went to court on if she could legally have the rights to her own body. And so that's what kind of pushed it back in 1989. So this kind of all happened around the same time. So it was like women were starting to push back, and they were starting to go to school to be doctors or to be in these traditionally male roles. And it kind of, I think it just triggered him even more.
That hit me too, as you were telling the story that, the word feminism was a key word back then. It was a trigger word, I guess. And so at that time, that was a big deal. They talked a lot about feminism. He had a mental illness. If it was today, it probably would have been just whatever the topic was today. You know what I mean? Right. He was focused on that, but if it happened today, it might be a Republicans or Democrat issue, or a Trump issue. It really was his mental illness, not feminism.
Right. And that's something though too that a lot of people were upset about back when this originally happened though too, was the word feminism or feminist wasn't used in these news articles. It wasn't used when people were reporting on it. Instead they used the word women, and because back then it's like if you were a woman you were a feminist, or if you were a feminist you were a woman. There was nothing in between. And now I don't think the word or the definition has changed. I think people have become more open-minded on being a feminist is more on it's not power to women per se, but it's more on just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I'm less than a man. You know, like I deserve to, if
I
I'm
think
working in the same exact
people get
job
it
description,
today.
yeah,
When you
right.
hear
And that's what I
feminism,
think,
you
you know,
understand what it
yeah,
is. Back then, it was a
right.
new key
It was
word
a
to
new,
use, so
right.
it was
Yeah,
it
yeah,
triggered a lot
right.
of.
Depends on who you
Exactly.
talk to. I know a lot of people who would say they do not like feminists.
Right. And I, well, I
Today's-
think,
Today,
Today?
it's one of,
Yes,
yeah, I agree with Cassie.
100% today.
Yeah, I agree with Cassie, but I think it's one of those stigmatized words where when you hear feminist, people typically think angry women, like angry righteous women. And that's not what,
I
that's
think
not what
that's the way it was
feminism.
in the '60s and in the '70s, probably too. But you really think
Maybe,
today
but
people get angry when they hear feminism?
Yes.
yes.
Who?
Yes.
I
All the
don't know
time.
anybody that get me angry at
I
that.
think I still
Don't
think
talk
there
to
are people,
anybody in the
yeah, I still
Republican
think that,
Party.
yeah, I was gonna say, I still think there are a lot of males, more specifically, but I still think females too. But there are a lot of people that kind of would still agree with this Mark Lepine on that women shouldn't be doctors, women shouldn't be engineers, women shouldn't be working in NASA. Women, their place is in the kitchen, at home, taking care of kids.
There are
You know,
people today that are famous for being this way. Even
yeah,
like I said earlier, Andrew Tate is somebody who has a
Yeah.
huge following of people who
Yeah.
love him because he is anti-feminine and he is anti-female and he tells people that women should be at home and take care of the men and they shouldn't have jobs.
I don't know who that is. Is that a religious leader?
No, he's not a religious leader. That's the thing, is that he got famous for being this misogynistic, piece of shit.
Mhm.
And that's basically
Right.
all he does now, is goes around and gives seminars about how
Okay, is this a young guy?
he's probably like 40.
No. Yeah.
I might know who you're talking about. Like
He kind of he's bald. He kind of reminds me of like the Pitbull, the singer.
Yeah.
That's what he kind of looks
Well,
like.
the thing is that he's basically he's kind of died out now, but like he's basically the focal point now. But there's millions of men who have podcasts or have followings that are doing the exact same thing. Like, this is not a once in a lifetime person. Like, he is just following a algorithm that he knows works.
And this is about females, not just about anybody.
Yeah.
Just not like men.
Nope. It's all about how females are basically emasculating men, and we are the problem in society.
I do not hear conversation.
Cassie,
ever.
I just looked him up. He is 35 years old. His
He's
birthday
aging like
is
crap.
Yeah. December 14th, 1986. So he's basically a year younger than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would suggest you look into him.
I probably don't want to know, but
no, he's not a good person. And that's the thing, is that like all these males who even like people like Joe Rogan, who claim to be, I don't care about feminism, you can do whatever you want. They have him on his podcast and talk to him and act like he's a normal person.
Yeah.
And they treat him like he's a celebrity.
Right. Yeah.
So it's still happening today. I mean, not even in America. Look at what's happening in Iran literally currently.
I get it. In other countries.
And that's just not even about like the religion in itself. It's about men believing that they have the ability to tell women what to wear and that they can tell them how moral they are. And if they don't feel like the woman's being moral enough, they get to kill her. That is what they think they are allowed to do in this world.
That's very sad.
It's insanely sad, and it's aggravating that in 1989 this was a big deal, and now it's still happening in 2022.
It's still happening, and that's why I like when I read about it in the book, I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about it, so I did some research because it was just really like a blip in the book that I'm reading, but I'm like, the book is kind of along the lines of some of this stuff, and then I'm like, oh, this is a perfect topic because it literally we are repeating history almost with what was going on then, what's going on now. We are going backwards.
Well,
with where we're
They
at now.
always say if you refuse to learn from the past, you are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
And we've discussed this on the show before, but I've also discussed it with, people that I work with, because oddly, I'm older than most of the people that I work with. But so, I try to explain to them, because they think my generation didn't do anything. But, really, in the 70s, Jess, you wouldn't have your job now. You wouldn't be able to have that job.
Right. I wouldn't be able to own a bank
credit card. You wouldn't be able to have
or a house
checking account. So we have come a long ways. We've made progress.
I agree with you there, but look at the people who are putting us back. It's not my generation or their generation below us. It's
and really,
politicians
it's not
who are. It's
even really even your generations. It's generations.
A lot of the issues that are going on today, we've talked about this many times. Are really distractions. They really are.
Right. Unfortunately,
Roe versus Wade is never going to go away. I mean, that's not going to happen. And so I don't know. The whole point of trying to push
I think
that, and it's going to be gays next. Gay issues are going to be next. It's really all to keep people distracted. There's no way we're going to go backwards.
Well, and I think unfortunately that is what we're seeing now is luckily blowing up in a lot of Republicans' faces right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
they
are
completely criticized from. Right? Yeah, I know.
Yes,
and I know,
but it's because thinking about they're going to take abortions away is so outrageous to 90% of the world. There's that 10% cannot also possibly think they're going to get away with it. So they have different.
But also, I get what you're saying, Dad. I get what you're saying too. But you have to realize too, the women or the little girls who are sacrificing their lives and their bodies because of this agenda that's going on.
Yeah,
because the fact people don't. You're right. 90% of people don't agree that we should outright abortions. But what about that 10-year-old girl in Ohio? What about the 16-year-old girl in Florida that was forced to carry the baby of a rapist? These girls,
it's happening.
It matters to them.
Yeah,
but I do think a lot of the agenda that's being pushed on us today and this year in 2022, or this decade, it's based on religion. It's pushing that Christianity agenda onto the rest of society, where
I agree with part of that. I think there is a large group of people that are that really feel that way because of religion, but there's a bigger group of people who are using that.
I agree.
Yes,
I think they know Christianity is the easiest way to get that.
Exactly. Yes.
And so I agree with that. Those people that are pushing that, they don't even agree with the topic. They're just trying to cause chaos.
Well, most of the people that are pushing it are hypocrites, and they're pushing it, and they're saying, do as I say, not what I do, because they have these love childs, or they are forcing their mistresses to have abortions.
Most of them, it's not about the issue, it's about the distraction.
And they know that
they know 90% of the world is going to be an uproar over what they're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their agenda is being fulfilled that way.
Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, they're lying about it too. I mean, I just saw it on the news somewhere that Ted Cruz from Texas was on, I think probably Fox News, some newscast, just absolutely gloating about this new railroad, or basically tracks that they're going to go from Texas all the way up into Canada and make it easier for transportation between the countries. And he was gloating about this whole thing. And then people were like, didn't you vote no for this?
Yeah.
And they showed his vote for no. He voted no for this, and he's on news gloating about how good it's going to be for Texas, how it's going to bring in all this economy. and acting like he decided this and he made up this bill and he voted against it. And I think that's what we really need to pay attention to, is all these people getting on and talking about gas prices and talking about abortion and talking about healthcare, and look at how they're actually voting, because they're not voting for these things.
Right.
It's the same as with all the like the baby formula shortage, the people that were voting against the production, like to end that shortage, basically that was an United States issue, not a world issue. The people that were saying, hey, all lives matters, were the ones that were voting against that, and we're
voting
causing
against
that shortage.
Basic nutrition for children.
I think it's funny, and I can't remember who it was. You guys probably know, but he voted against, and I can't remember what state, but he voted against biracial marriages.
Okay.
And he is married to a Black woman.
Thomas?
And has biracial. Yes.
No, this was an actual, not Clarence Thomas. This was an actual like state representative.
Oh.
Yeah, in Congress, who voted against interracial marriage, and there's not
biracial, interracial marriage, and has and like, could you imagine being that spouse? Like, could you imagine like saying, "Oh, I'm against this, but I'm doing it."
There is another topic where we've come a long way. Can you imagine when I was a kid? It was illegal for an interracial marriage was illegal.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds so ridiculous. It's laughable today, but no, and that's not that long ago.
No,
it's not.
It's insane.
So we have come a long ways, and
yes, but I also think we are taking a huge step backwards, and
I'm sure
the people that are being
20 years from now,
for
it's going to sound pretty ridiculous that same-sex marriage could happen. Like that was illegal.
I can't believe it, and
it was ever
living in history.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
But that's the world you live in.
So there you go. We have something that was kind of the world's first mass school shooting, and
I'm surprised I haven't heard of this, because they talk about school shootings, and I've never heard of this.
Yeah,
because I know there was school shootings before this, but it wasn't. It was nowhere on this scale. I
think a lot of it, though. Yeah, right. I think a lot of it, though, too, is because this happened in Canada, so it's international news. Where that's probably why, and it's something too. It happened back in the, late 80s. It happened in 89. So at the time, it probably wasn't. It wasn't a worldwide news story, or if it was, it only lasted for like a day, and then people forgot about it.
Yeah.
So it's not something that was focused on for, because that's the thing too with these school shootings. I mean, it sucks that it happens. We all want to be informed on what's going on and stuff, but it's like you usually will hear about it. Well, maybe not so much anymore because they happen so much, but like you hear about them and then it's in the news for like a week, so you're constantly hearing all these updates. Right. Yeah.
I would like to see, because I know that Canada has stricter gun laws than here, obviously, but I would like to see what changed.
That's what I need to look that up, because
that's a big thing here. And it happened in Australia too, like where their only school shooting happened, and then literally the next week they had strict gun laws.
Right.
I meant to look that. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because I was thinking that the whole time I was reading up on this story.
Because I am.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully. That's what you would expect to happen when stuff like this happens.
America needs to get on board.
Okay, so the Smithsonian magazine. The Smithsonian magazine did a story, and I'm just looking at the headline, and it says mass shooting that reshaped the Canadian debate about gun and political identities. And it is the 1989 Montreal Massacre. It set the stage for discussions about insane killers and targeting women. So I haven't read the story. Those are just the headlines.
Highlights.
Yeah.
Well, it
so
probably,
this was,
if not
yeah,
getting
I
rid of,
think,
made for mental health checks when buying
yeah.
bins.
So, and I didn't say how old he was. So he was born in 1964. So when he did this, when he went through and killed these 14 women and wounded 14 others, he was only 25 at the time. So really young, I think. Well, I mean, I guess not really because we have younger now, but
I'm sorry, I think I cut out when you were talking about this, but did he go to this school or did he just pick this school?
so I think he was enrolled at the University of Montreal, which is the university that this engineering school like program was. It'd be like, like, oh, the Michigan State University School of Business kind of thing.
Right.
So I think that's what it was. He applied to go to this engineering program twice and was denied twice, basically because he didn't have the prerequisite courses. He needed 2 extra courses, like prereq courses, to be able to get into the engineering program, and he didn't have those, and then he refused to take them. Yeah. And so, okay, so here it says, so the 14 women who were killed too, were all engineers, and then the 14 that were injured, there were 12 engineering students, 1 nursing student, 1 clerk in the financial department. And I said it in the beginning too. 4 of the people who were injured were men, but no men died in this massacre. It was all women who died, and almost all of them were under the age of 25, which makes sense because they were in college.
Right.
This was a decade before the Columbine massacre, and then the shootings in Virginia Tech.
When was, I can't remember what school this was at, but the sniper on the bell tower of a college campus?
Dallas.
Do you know what year it was?
About 60.
Okay, that's what I thought. It was before this.
It was in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, and that's what I saw. This was like one of the first, I think, mass shootings.
Right.
So, I'm not seeing it. This is like kind of just a story about all the massacres, the big mass shootings and stuff. So I don't really see anything about the gun laws changing in Canada.
Mm-hmm. It probably brought up a discussion, but
yeah, he used a Ruger Mini 14 semi-automatic, which I wanted to look that up. I hate looking at this kind of stuff. Like, oh, here's my Google history looking at guns. Yeah. Really? Okay, so it's kind of
like gun you'd see on a show.
Right. It reminds me of, well, it's a little bit more bigger, but it's like, it looks like it's like a little BB gun almost. I mean, it's a rifle. It's a lightweight semi-automatic rifle. And it was introduced in 1973. And it looks like 45 millimeter bullets. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's just like a little, I wouldn't call it a hunting rifle even, maybe I don't know, like a bird gun almost. But yeah. And then he had a knife, but they didn't say anything. I couldn't find any information on like the size of the knife or anything. No. It could have been a butter knife, but
back then they didn't.
I'm sure it was a hunting knife.
Yeah, right.
They didn't have assault weapons back then, and
and you got to think too, and like now,
rifle to go hunting with,
probably.
Right, but that's something too that like you got to think about. Like this was 30 years ago, almost. This massacre happened, and or more than 30 years ago.
32,
Right?
33.
Yeah, it's over 30 years ago. But like people probably you could just walk on campus and walk into buildings without being questioned. Like even when I was in college, like a random stranger could just come into any of the college buildings without being questioned about it. I don't know what college campuses look now, but I'm sure that they, like even just with the schools, like with Odin at school, parents aren't allowed in without permission. I mean, look at the situation we just had, just locally, where the school was in lockdown just because a parent was disorderly, and it caused mass hysteria for something that really wasn't that much of a big deal for that. But, there's just so many safety precautions and things that are put in place now that this, I mean, it does, I was gonna say this couldn't happen, but it does. Unfortunately, it does happen. But
Our world today is a scary world.
But the thing that shocked me the most with this situation is like he walked into this room, said, "Hey, all the men leave, all the women line up, and I'm holding a rifle," and then they did, and it's like, okay, I get you're scared, but like,
what are you
one
supposed to do?
guy? Like one guy against,
but then after
you got to
that,
think
he
like
went
20
upstairs
people.
3 flights of stairs. Like,
right.
I don't understand how the whole building wasn't in
A lot
total
of
panic.
Again, you have to think about that. This is pre really having any sort of safety drills. This is a new situation for these people. They've never had to deal with the idea of somebody coming into a classroom and threatening to shoot them. I completely get it from their perspective. Like this is insane. But this is insane. Like this is not something that they know how to deal with. This is not something that they are prepared for.
Right. I kind of wonder though too, like the men that left, that like what kind of guilt did they have?
Oh, I'm sure they have
after the fact of like, holy cow. Because I do think like and Cassie, I think you cut out in this part, but he walked into the classroom, he told the men to leave, women to line up, and then they like didn't know what to do, so they just sat there. And then he shot his gun up in the air, like into the ceiling a couple times, and then that's when they were like, oh, okay, we're gonna take you seriously. But I still think too, it's like they probably just like the women probably thought they were going to be taken hostage. They didn't think that they were just going to be executed. I think that was something too, where and the men probably thought the same thing. Oh, these women, they even worst case scenario probably thought that women were just going to get raped and tortured or whatever, and then be done with it. But they didn't think they were going to be lined up and executed. Right. So I thought that was a cool story. I figured none of you guys had heard it before. I wanted to share it with you guys. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's interesting.
It's a good story, Jess.
Something to think about.
Yeah.
Good.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, let's get this wrapped up. You guys, anything you want to add?
Yeah.
And who's up next week? Let's get that straight now.
Mom is up next.
Mom is up next.
Mom, and I sent you a good topic today. I texted it to you. I don't know if you're gonna want to do it though, but I sent you a really
I do have a couple of other ones too.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay. Because if you don't do the one I sent you, I'll do it my next time around.
Well, those are 3 that I can do the next 3 times.
Okay. There you go. Perfect.
But it might be time because my next one might be a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I gotta look into it. I got lots of homework to do and I don't have any time to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
because we're busy at Weasel Fest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
We're rearranging the house, so this place is a zoo.
Yeah. All right.
So talk to you guys later. Bye. Hey, everybody, please like, share, and
subscribe.
The Family School of Thought at gmail.com. Okay? Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.